Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by PILMA. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Hi, this is Gracie Howells with PILMA. Let's hit pause for just a second on this episode because I have to tell you about this event that every forward-thinking PI firm should have on their calendar this January. It's the AI for PI Expo in Orlando, Florida, January 15th through 17th. This is the very first conference of its kind dedicated entirely to showing personal injury firms how to harness AI to save time, cut costs, and grow faster. You'll get hands-on demos, practical training, and access to the best AI solutions built for law firms. Reserve your spot now at pilma.org/AI for PI Expo via the link in the show notes.
Hey, it's Jenna, Membership Growth Advisor with PILMA. If you're serious about growing your law firm this year, don't miss your chance to book a free law firm growth strategy session with me. We'll break down what's holding you back, identify the biggest opportunities in your firm, and map out the next steps to accelerate your growth. No pressure, just real strategy and direction tailored to you. Click the link in the show notes to schedule your free session.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have the honor and pleasure of having Allison C. Williams, a Grow Your Firm coach. Yeah. So welcome to the show, Allison.
Thank you for having me, Ken. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So tell me, I think we always tell our own story best. Tell me your story, how you got into mentoring lawyers and helping them grow their practices.
Yeah, I am a lawyer's lawyer. I've been a practicing attorney for 2.5 decades now, and started a law firm when I was about 10 years out, and very quickly realized that being great at law had nothing at all to do with being great at business. They were completely separate entities. So I tried to do everything that I could, that I knew how to do to grow a law firm, which is to grow a law practice. Just started hustling, started working myself into the ground, stacking on the hours, burning out. And one fortuitous day, I had gotten myself to the point where I was nowhere near caught up, but I at least had a day in the office the following day. So I said, all right, I got everything adjourned. I'm not going to be in court tomorrow, so I'll be able to get through some of this paperwork that was mounting. And just decided to work a little bit harder to get myself to the point where I could sleep a little later and enjoy the day in the office. Well, that didn't exactly happen. I thought I would wait till I get home to go to sleep, and God had other plans. So I fell asleep driving and came very close to hitting a guardrail. And that was kind of my aha moment that working harder is not working. Realized that I had to figure out how to get all this work done in a way that made sense. So I started systematizing everything. And that really is where my foundational phrase, crushing chaos, comes from. Crushing chaos is about systematizing everything in a business. And once I started doing that, my business got itself under control. But most importantly, I started realizing that systematizing was the way to everything successful in business. It's how you scale marketing. It's how you scale your sales. It's how you get better people in the company. It's all about the system. And once I realized that and locked and loaded it in my own company, I grew it to a multiple 7-figure company in 3.5 years. Then created a coaching business, and through systematizing everything, scaled it into a multiple 7-figure company in another 3 years. And now that is pretty much how I spend my time. I help lawyers all across the country and in multiple countries across the world learn how to systematize themselves into the successful law firm that they want.
That's true. You can't scale unless you're systematized, unless you got processes, procedures, and everything. People used in our firm just said we had a process for how to go to the bathroom. It was, yeah. So I think you're right on that. I was fortunate to have somebody a former IBMer that was kind of like my COO, and he really helped me do it. Because I was good at marketing, but I wasn't that good at that time in doing the systems. And here's what, in doing the masterminds, this is something that I see, and with the PILMA members, is that they know they need to do it, Allison, but they just say, I just can't get through it. I can't finish it. I can't. And so, I've got my ideas, but I want to hear what your ideas are So tell me how you would, if you were coaching a lawyer, how would you go about, they said, I got no systems, I got no processes. Everybody just kind of knee jerks. And, we train people by just throwing them in and shadowing, and then they go off, we got no formal onboarding or whatever. How would you tell them? Because it's not something you can just snap your finger and all of a sudden you're systematized. It takes time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's a great question. The thing that I always tell people, especially if you don't have a systems mind, because a lot of really great trial lawyers in particular don't have a linear system. They have creative bursts. And so those folks in particular are really hard to get onto a system. So I always tell people start with something simple. Just get it out of your brain. Because you have a system. You don't know necessarily that it's the best system, but you do have a way of doing things. So the first thing we have to do is start with understanding how you are doing things now so we can get it better. And the easiest way to do that is something I created a long time ago called the state of art, ART, which is ask, record, transcribe. Just bring someone into your office who works with you. If you're the only person in your shop, most likely you would be doing this by yourself. But you want to ask, what is the way that I do this? Then you want to record yourself saying it. And that can be recorded through a secretary. It can be recorded through a recording device. Now we have all sorts of AI tools like Claude and Claude, and you can get it into actually something that can systematize it for you, right? So the advent of AI really helps with that. But you get it out and then you transcribe it. You get the words on paper into something cohesive. And then you have something to work with. So you're not just starting at ground zero. Once you do that, it's very easy now to take your intellectual work product, your thoughts as to how you do things, and start to figure out where the holes are, right? And that's where a coach comes in. That's where we will actually look at what are you doing right now and where are we missing efficiency? Where are we missing profit? Where are we adding time? The first thing you have to do is get a control of your time so that you can allocate that time in the way that gets you the most profit in the least amount of time. So more often than not, that's about taking something that you're doing and just doing it a little bit better, 10% better, 15% better. Instead of having to like break the mold, you are really working from where you are. That's the easiest way to start getting it out and getting it documented.
I think don't they have something now called Scribe.ai or something? I mean, they got so many things out there, Claude and everything. It's a lot easier than when I was doing it 15, 25 years ago.
Oh, I agree.
Because we were using Canva and taking snapshots and all kinds of stuff, and we had manuals, so now everything can be done digitally. And there's a lot of software out there, platforms. Do you recommend any particular platform to store all these things, all these processes and systems and procedures?
Yeah, so the tech tools are like you said, they're so voluminous now. One of the things I always tell people is I don't like the idea of creating a manual for the office. You
Yeah,
need manuals for departments, right? Because you don't need to overload
yeah,
your salespeople with what is the legal process or your legal folks with what is the marketing process. So you need to have it broken down by departments. But once you get that, lots of different tech tools exist, right? I'm still a big fan of Suite Process. I think it's a great platform where you can break things down and have them searchable. I also
cheap,
think even
cheap
just
too.
doing some of the old school stuff, like putting things into Microsoft Word or Excel until you actually have a template that you can put into an easier technologically accessible tool is great. You want to have it stored somewhere that the people who are going to use it are going to be able to access it. And you want to make sure that it's password protected so that it can't be changed without the authority of somebody who actually agrees that the change needs to happen.
Yeah, I think you know before Sweet Success, and now we use a thing called Touchstone, but I mean they're all good. I did have manuals, litigation manual, a pre-suit, a pre-lit manual, a workers' comp manual, a social security manual, intake manual. I had a client service manual, and it reminded me of the days when I used to get the statutes, the CCH stuff. And you'd have to take stuff out of a book and put stuff in after they passed new laws. And I said, this is crap. Somebody needs to come up. And they did. And now it's so much easier, but it still takes time. I mean, the deal is you can't, it's like eating an elephant. You kind of got to do it like one little bite at a time. And then after a few, I put it to you this way: it took us 6 months at Pilma to memorialize everything we did. And what I did, I got my best person that was doing that job to do it, and everybody worked an hour a week on it.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is, I didn't try to do it all myself because I don't even know how to do. I don't know how to open the mail or get this. I don't know what the process is. But
Yeah, I think
I
that's a
felt like,
great idea, by the way.
and so that way it doesn't kill everybody. And it was still took us 6 months. But we just did it. We had somebody that was a key person, a lead person that they would bring it into, and then they would look at it. Then the section would get together and they would go over it, like you said, looking for holes. Just because you do it one way, it's like cooking that pot roast. You always had to get the extra long one because of the shank. And somebody said, "Well, why don't you just cut the shank off?" Well, my mom never did that, but things change, right? So I just think that just because you've always done it, I mean, especially now with AI, I think are you seeing the people you're talking to, the lawyers, what's their idea of the AI? Because I mean, a lot of the smaller firms and solos are kind of scared of it, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is what we're finding is that AI is actually picking up in the legal vertical faster than in other verticals, which is shocking if you think about it, because lawyers are the laggards, right? We are the starry decisis folks. We don't change unless it absolutely has to change.
Yeah.
But you find that a lot of lawyers in solo and small, but also in mid-sized firms, are really picking up to it because it does create immediate efficiency. Now, one of the problems we have is that some people have latched on a little bit too quickly, and they've started using it for legal work when it hasn't yet been trusted, verified. It's not searching the right indexable databases of information. So if it's not used with a legal platform like Lexis or Westlaw or Fastcase, then the answers that you're getting are oftentimes not true. So, those lawyers that have been disciplined for citing cases that don't exist.
Right.
There is that, right? But most of us are using it wisely. Most of us are taking a moment of pause and saying, how can I try this and see what I can work from? And
Yeah.
for a lot of law firm owners, the beauty of it is that it allows you to take the fundamentals of some of the things you were talking about earlier. Like, you have your manual, but it allows you to make use case examples, right? So the beautiful thing about AI is that once you learn how to prompt it appropriately, you can keep training it to get better for you. And that's the beautiful thing about AI. In fact, we talk about this in the upcoming book I have coming out in March, Crushing Chaos, the law firm owner's guide to more money, more free time, and less stress. The beauty of AI is that once you prompt it appropriately, you can not just scale your success, but you can create anticipated solutions for problems that are in the pike right now. So an example, you've hired somebody, you got to train them. Training takes time, training costs lawyers money. That's why we don't like to hire baby lawyers. We like to hire somebody who knows how to lawyer. Well, if you have a process for training someone, the person can be trained on their own. So they don't have to take your time in the same way that they had to when we first started out in our careers many moons ago, right? You can get somebody to learn how to craft an argument. You can teach someone how to format a motion. You can teach someone how to cross-examine. And a lot of these things can happen through prompting in AI because they can take language models of things like transcripts and audio files and workflows, and you're able to give that over to someone so that they can study on their own. They come to you much better informed so that you can teach them faster and you can teach them better. So this allows you to cut out tens of thousands of dollars worth of time that it would otherwise take you to train an associate, that it would otherwise take you to get your secretary up and loaded, that it would otherwise take you to get a paralegal locked and loaded. And if you're able to even cut off a month of time, if you just think about that, that could be anywhere from $20,000 to $80,000 a month, give or take, depending on the rate of the person that you're training. So it really does cost very little to get you significant economies of scale and ROI on AI.
Yeah. And I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was from yesterday, it said AI is about to empty Madison Avenue. It's smart advertisements from Google, Meta, and Amazon sideline agencies and creative workers. So,
yeah, the creative folks are definitely feeling it the most. In fact, I think a lot of people are trying with AI to replace marketers. And while I don't think we are there yet, because I think there is still a human science of marrying science and art in marketing, the science part, definitely AI is picking up at a much faster rate than I think was ever contemplated. So it does replace a good portion of the job.
Yeah, for sure. I know everybody said it was not going to replace people, but it is going to replace people.
Oh, it is.
I think I was talking to another person on the podcast earlier, and they said that their deal is they kind of track all their people, and if they're not using AI, on a regular basis, then they'll fire them because they know that that's going to make them more productive. They got to embrace it, get into it and use it. Of course, you want to use it correctly too. I mean, I'm so into it, even though I'm older than dirt. I mean, PILMA's doing an AI for PI conference next month in Orlando, 2.5 days, and we're going to have workshops and everything about how to use it for intake, how to use it for thought partnership, how to use it for planning, how to use it for marketing. It's just so many ways. There's a lot of companies springing up for PI lawyers, and then transactional lawyers. I mean, it just takes most of the work out. I mean, I went to law school, but I could buy my partner out of on another business I got, and I just went in AI and laid it all out, and then it drafted up all the documents, and then I sent them to a friend of mine that's a corporate lawyer. I said, I just want you, I'll pay you. I just want you to tell me if this looks good.
Yeah.
He said, yeah. He said, might change one little thing here or there. He said, but otherwise, he said, yeah. He said, I said, well, AI did it. He said,
Yeah. Well, I don't think the question is whether AI is going to replace jobs. The question is going to be, how do you innovate and become indispensable, notwithstanding the fact that so much of the work can be dispensed. And I think that is something that we are still figuring out while we're flying the plane in the air. But, if you don't use it, then you're missing out on the profitability scale that someone else is taking advantage of. So you're losing market share as your job is eroding, which is kind of a double whammy there.
Yeah. So, you're talking about systems and everything, but let's get back. What do you see? I take it you deal with a lot of lawyers every year, and you go in and they've got chaos or whatever, they're putting out fires, being reactive, not proactive. Or they hit a plateau, they're stuck or whatever, or they're working, 80-hour weeks. But what do you think, like if somebody came to you and said, okay, what's the top 3 to 5 things I need to do, Allison, to get my house in order, to get it to where I can make more profits and have less chaos, and have a family life, and make a good profit. I'm not trying to rule the world. I just want to, I like to be able to make 200,000 to 500,000 profit, put it in my pocket every year to be able to take good vacations and send my kids to college. What would you tell that lawyer?
Yeah, so I love this question because this is one of these questions that comes up every time we meet with a lawyer, right? They want to know, how can I get better with using systems? And so the one thing I always tell people is, first of all, your answer is going to depend on the size of your company, where you are, right? Because chaos at 200,000 is very different than chaos at 2 million, is very different than chaos at 10 million. But you have to first start with a diagnosis, right? What is the nature of the chaos that you have? Is it marketing chaos? Is it sales chaos? Is it people chaos? And start with solving the problem that is costing you the most money and taking up the most mental real estate. So usually we can write down just a basic back of the napkin analysis. Where are you spending your nights and weekends? Frustrated, angry, tired, exhausted, etc. Then where is the money associated with that activity? Because sometimes things are taking up time and energy, but they don't cost you a whole lot to fix. So, if phone calls is taking up a lot of time and energy, there's a way we can systematize phone calls that will cost you a negligible amount of money. But if something is costing you time and money, like training a lawyer, well, that's probably going to require a more expensive fix. But it probably, as I said before, from the example I gave you, doesn't have to be that expensive. So that's number one, right? Proper diagnosis. The second thing is always figuring out where you can get the most leverage from the solutions that you're going to employ. Maybe you got a marketing problem, right? Maybe you don't have quality leads coming in. So the people that are coming in are not your people. They're not giving you the value of case that you want. They're not giving you the level of value that you want to extract from it. So you need better clients. Well, you could solve for that immediately but you're probably not going to see the results of that solution right away, right? Because if I start tinkering with my messaging on my website, or if I suddenly go out and network with higher net worth people so I can generate higher net worth clients, I'm not going to instantaneously change the quality of the landscape of my clients. I might start to get some traction, but not right away. But some things I could do right away that will attract a higher client. I could raise my prices, right? That gets me immediately more money in on fewer people. And I can lose the people at the very bottom by doing nothing other than changing a pricing strategy. So that's number two, right? Proper solutions. Then number three, once you start looking at what the solutions are going to be, you really have to think, where am I going to get the significant long-term gain off of my solution, right? So we don't want to just solve for today's problem and get immediate ease. Sometimes people are like, I need to spend more time with my family. The immediate solution to that is just go home at 5 o'clock. Well, you might do that, but you might also commit an ethics violation by disregarding a statute of limitations if you just did that, right? So you can't just do the easiest thing.
Yeah.
But once you figure out what is going to get you a solution today that will help today and tomorrow, that's when you start to employ those strategies. Because what you'll find is that you'll start to chip away at some of the pain in the future so that it doesn't actually get here, right? So you're kind of constantly kicking the can so that the pain today starts to get less and the pain tomorrow actually doesn't show up.
So raising prices, it's interesting. I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago. I had a domestic lawyer stand up at one of our events, and she says, I'm maxed out. My problem's not getting clients, is I just can't. I'm kind of stuck, and I can't find good associates. And she says, I don't know what to do. And I said, what do you charge an hour? She said, $300. I said, we'll go to 600. She says, well, I'll lose half the clients. I said, absolutely.
That's what you want.
And make the same amount of money.
Right.
But there's a elasticity, and it's a little different with PI, but with like hourly work or whatever, you got that. I call it that. The more you go up, you got to look and see what's your conversion rate on your leads, because it's going to go down. That's okay though. It's like at Pillman, we went up on prices, and my CEO said, well, we're going to lose people. I said, we will. I said, but we're giving way too much value. I said, and if the people are not willing to pay for it, then they're really not serious about growing their firms.
Yeah.
And it all worked out.
And the piece that people also don't talk about with raising prices is that when you raise your prices, you inherently make yourself more desirable to the people who can afford your higher price. It's kind of the crazy thing, right? A lot of people think, well, if I raise prices, I'm going to lose some people who are very price resistant. And you can have very rich people who are very price resistant, right? Not everyone who objects to a high price is a low income person.
No.
But there is a signal that we equate more money with more value. If I walk into a restaurant and I order a steak and that steak is $20, I have a different expectation than if I go into a restaurant and that steak costs $100. So if I expect something greater and you are offering me something that is a low cost, I'm going to have a lower expectation. And I'm almost writing the story that you're not that great before I even start working with you. But if your price is higher, one, I have to get over my price objection to work with you. So you have to help me over that objection. So you have to have a higher level of sales skill. Two, you have to deliver at a higher level because now I'm paying more. So now I expect more. You get into the habit of delivering more. You start attracting people who want more and will require you to do more. You create a better business just by getting paid more. That's the part that people don't talk about. They talk about, I'm going to lose some low income folks, but you're going to gain a better business just by that strategy alone.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people, they only, what is it, the latest and the greatest? You see these guys and gals all the time. They want the newest iPhone. They don't care if they just, if the one they got's fine, they want the latest, the greatest, a pocketbook, a watch, Rolex. A Timex will tell the time just like a Rolex, but people will pay 20, 30, 40, 50,000 for a watch when they could go to Sam's Club and get a Timex for $65.
Absolutely.
But it's perception, and I want the best, and and hey, I think that way too. If I call a lawyer, I've been doing some estate planning, I've been getting prices and everything, and I don't mind paying extra. I figure, well, this guy must really be good, right?
I
They
agree.
wouldn't charge as much. And sometimes that's not true, but most of the time it is true because they can't sustain it if they're not good, right?
Right.
The market's going to adjust and word gets out, and thank God for little Google reviews. You know,
Yeah, that Google review will definitely tell you if you did not live up
yeah,
to that $1,000 hourly rate, that there's
yeah.
definitely somebody that's going to tell you about yourself.
And I just I thought something's happened, and I didn't realize it till about last week. But it's not going to make a big deal for PI lawyers, but for domestic and criminal lawyers, that now Google reviews can be done anonymously.
Mm,
And so, a lot of people don't want to talk about, they won't give reviews that they've been through a divorce, or they want to give it if they got a DWI. They don't want the world to know it. I mean, some people don't want to know that they got into a wreck and they got a lot of money.
yeah.
So I got a feeling that might help. I don't know. I
Yeah,
think
I think it could. It'll be interesting because there's a movement afoot within different legal sectors with lawyers objecting to Google reviews, not because the litigant doesn't have a right to say whatever they feel, but because lawyers are constrained to give an honest response. Right. So litigant goes out and litigant is the adverse party in your case, and you just wipe the floor with them. So then they go on and allege that they are your client and trash talk you so that, they can harm your reputation. Well, that's fraudulent, right? Now, Google once upon a time would actually, you could object and you could demonstrate that this person wasn't your client, and then you could ultimately get the review down. But now they don't really even respond to you. They just kind of leave it out there. But let's say it's a real client. The client says a whole host of things that might be true, but out of context. So the client says, well, you refused to represent me. You showed up to court and asked the court to fire me as your client, and you left me in a vulnerable state. What they're not going to share is that they hadn't paid their bill, that they were abusive to your office staff, that they didn't follow your legal advice, and that they called you a string of names and made the working relationship impossible. You don't get to say that, right? So, there's definitely some pressure now coming out that bar associations generally are not inclined toward, but I'm starting to see some reviews that there are actually bar associations that are behind the scenes looking at how they can be fairer to the the legal advocate to say, hey,
yeah,
you should be able to respond to factually inaccurate information about you. If that person is going to open the door to say something, you should be able to open the door to respond. Now, sometimes that works against you because, if you come too hard at your client, the next client, even if they hear you, can say, well, do I really want to work with a lawyer that's hostile against their own client? So you have to kind of gauge that. But, that's coming too, I think.
okay. So what do you see the biggest change that's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months in the legal?
Yeah, in the legal world, I think we've already talked about it. I think it's AI. I think AI is a huge disruptor. I think it is going to change business models. I think you're going to see a lot more flat fees for folks that are billing hourly because they can get the economies of scale on the efficiency created by AI. I think you're going to see a retraction in the workforce. I do think you're going to see fewer, especially support staff. I don't think you're immediately going to see it with lawyers, but I do think you're going to see entire support teams gutted because the work of a paralegal can be done by now someone who is not necessarily a paralegal, a legal assistant, someone that's generally familiar working in a law firm. They don't necessarily have to have gone to school. And then I think you're going to eventually see entire areas of transactional law completely replaced by lawyers. Lawyers now being out of the profession, but now you're going to start to see a legal strategist over a larger scale of volume. So now instead of handling 40 cases at a time, I can handle 200 cases at a time because my AI agent has been trained to be able to do a lot of drafting for me that otherwise would have to have been done by legal talent. So you're going to get a lot of margin for the folks that are owners, and for the folks that are workers, I think you are going to see a lot of retraction.
Yeah. And if you don't do this, you're going to be left behind, really.
Yeah, very much. Whether you
Yeah.
like it or not, it's kind of where we're headed.
Yeah. Well, Allison, thank you so much. If somebody wants to chat or get up with you, talk about hiring you, how's the best way for them to get up with you?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on, Ken. I really appreciate this. So, for those that are interested in learning about what we do at my company, Law Firm Mentor, you can check us out on lawfirmmentor.net. And if you're really interested in just getting some hardcore strategies as to what you can do to crush chaos in your business and make more money, you can check out our book that's coming out in March of next year. It is Crushing Chaos, the Law Firm Owner's Guide to More Money, More Free Time, and Less Stress.
All right. And with that, until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.